Hello out there. I've got something different to share with you today. I brought someone to talk about their rather in-depth research. And some of you may recall I've mentioned my guest work on shows and in some of my videos. I brought him here to talk to you about his new documentary in the first installment that was recently released, Wagging the Dog Part 1, the story behind the story of COVID-19. And I've got notes and questions, so let's bring him in and get started. Everyone, Clint Richardson. Hi, Clint.
Greetings.
It's great to have you here.
Well, thank you.
It's taken a little while. Sorry about that.
Well, let me just say that I don't watch a lot of stuff. I'm always busy doing my own research and my own thing, and I make an exception whenever you pass on a video because you're doing some really good works. You're getting in depth into things that I don't have time to get in depth. And there's not a lot of people out there doing really good work, so keep it up.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
In fact,
Uh,
I would say there's a lot of crap out there.
I would say that too. Even though I don't watch that much myself.
Mm.
But and speaking of crap, speaking of crap, I was wondering if since so much of what we have to talk about is dealing with viruses, I was hoping that you could talk to us about the theory going around about there not being any viruses.
Yes. Well, um, one quick note on that is you can buy viruses. You can buy infected mice. You can, they're all over the place. So it's a matter of understanding the term, right? So let's take another term, just as sort of a metaphoric example here. I'm like, let's say we see someone commit a crime. Let's say a killer, right? Someone kills someone else, and we would therefore label them as a murderer. Well, do murderers actually exist?
Um, well, sure.
There's a man or a woman who is murderous, who's who's deadly and does horrible things to other people. But is there such thing as a murderer? And the answer to that is no. It's a title. It's something we call somebody to understand the action that they take, right? So no, there's no such thing as a murderer, but there are people who are murderer us. Likewise, there's no such thing as a virus. That's just a term or a title we put on things that are viral. You see the difference?
Yeah.
Okay, so when we talk about quote unquote a virus, it would be technically correct to say a virus doesn't exist. It would also be technically correct to say that Clint Richardson doesn't exist, that the Empire State Building doesn't exist, because these are merely titles. And it's not attached. The title is not attached to the physical actual being or thing. Okay, the actual material we're talking about. Now, when we look at things that are viral, meaning things that their purpose, their goal is to infect other things, whether that's a protein, a cell, or whatever it is, RNA, DNA, all of these things can be, and by nature are infectious. Now, there's two types of infection, right? Because you're born with a pre or a postnatal your postnatal virome is all the different viruses in nature which actually go in and program your epigenomic structure, your genome, by flipping on and off switches, making you susceptible to certain things. It's why you have allergies. It's why you have cancer. It's why you have all these different things, because certain viruses turn on and off the epigenome, the epigenomic switches, I should say, sort of like the switches in your garage door opener, to make it so your garage door opener can only communicate with your garage door receiver. Well, in a way, that's very similar to what exosomes do. Exosomes are something that's created. There's endosomes inside of a cell, and from the endosome, the exosomes, uh, meaning outside, exosome, um, break away from the cell, and this happens all throughout your body. They're everywhere in your body. Okay, so what they're doing is they're delivering to other parts of the body. They're sort of communicating. That's how the body works. Is sort of this communication network of cells and RNA and DNA, all these different things. Well, that's what these exosomes are actually carrying from cell to cell. If your body is completely healthy without any viral, or any other kind of disease pathogens or anything that's contagious and is actually virally infecting or delivering its cargo into the cell, well, then your normal day to day basis, from blood to cells to everything in your body, basically, is happening through endosomes, and then the exosomes are excreted and from the cell and go to other cells and communicate, and that's what these receptors and binding and all that stuff happens. So when something that is viral, which we can therefore call a virus loosely, um, the 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 virus itself, and this is a well-known thing, I cannot figure out why people don't do their own research and just, if you look, I've pulled up 20 studies in front of me just to make sure I have the correct understanding, because I figured this out a long time ago when I was doing prion research, and in fact, prions are what causes it's the dementia diseases and mad cow disease and all that. And prions are actually what prevents or stops or allows that communication process to happen. So of course, prions and exosomes are very much interrelated. Okay, so basically, let me just read this so we have a simple understanding. And this is a paper, very easy to find. It's called The Role of Extracellular, extra meaning, again, outside, extracellular vesicles, which is the definition of an exosome. An extracellular vesicle, meaning a package basically that's to be delivered. So it leaves the cell, and this is particularly the role of exosomes or extracellular vesicles in COVID-19 virus infection. And here's the highlights. This tells you everything that happens. Extracellular vesicles, that is exosomes, contribute to intercellular communication. So if I'm a cell and I'm way over here on the left side of the body and I want to talk to you over here on the right side of the body, I send an exosome to communicate with you. They fuse together, or they bind together, excuse me, and they deliver their cargo, whether that is a protein, anything. And in a sense, you could compare that to getting a update packet from Microsoft, right? Your computer's got some kind of problem with it that they found. Microsoft sends a friendly extracellular package that fixes your computer. And then there's the other kind of thing that gets sent to your computer, which is viral, right? Well, they're both technically, in a way, I guess you could say they're very comparable. They can be confused, right? A viral exosome and a normal exosome can be confused as the same thing because, hey, guess what? Let's move on. Virus infected cells release extracellular vesicles, in other words, exosomes, which contain viral components that promote infection. So, in other words, the virus goes into a healthy cell and it changes or delivers a foreign or viral DNA, RNA, protein, or whatever the purpose of that virus is. And to be viral is its purpose, right? It wants to, like a parasite, it's programmed, if you will, to spread that information, which is what we're talking about. We're talking about communication. When we say that a disease happens in the body, what do we say? We say it's communicated. Well, that's all that's happening is you're getting bad information, if you will, or bad biological programming from something other than what you should be having. And that uses the exosomes to send, if you will, like a bad virus on your computer out into the rest of the body, which is what COVID is. That's how COVID is working in this particular way. So, in other words, the virus uses the uh, the exosome, or in this case, it infects the cell, delivers its information into the endosome, and then the endosome, which is inside, excretes the viral particles inside that carrier, right? You could say that the end or the endosome is sort of like the post office, and the exosomes are all the letters that are going out to all these different addresses inside the body to connect and deliver the virus. This is how viruses work. This is why viruses are so scary in a lot of cases, and why, uh, specifically for COVID, what is happening is that they added onto the viral material, they added HIV spikes so that a bat virus could be studied in a lab, so uh, so that the bat virus could then infect human cells and do this exact process we're talking about. And here's what it says: these extracellular vesicles, or exosomes, may contribute to the spread of COVID-19 virus as they transfer such receptors as CD9 and ACE2. The ACE2 receptor is what HIV uses. That's why they added it, or they put a gain of function onto the SARS-1 virus, adding MERS, HIV, and other orthologs, so that they could communicate through this process, through this cellular process. In other words, how does COVID spread throughout the body? I should say, how does SARS-2, because that's the correct name. How does it spread throughout the body? It transfers its RNA or DNA into uh, the cell, and the cell then spits it out through these exosomes. And those exosomes then go and attach other places in the body that have the CD9 or the ACE2 receptor, and those have big long names, of course, and deliver their payload. Upon entry, it says, COVID-19 virus may be directed into the exosomal pathway, and its component is packaged into the exosomes for secretion. All right, that's exactly what I just explained. All right, so the viral particle, which we're calling SARS-2, um, COVID-19 is just a description of the symptoms. It's not. I mean, it's it's kind of like AIDS and HIV. AIDS is a description of symptoms, whereas HIV is an actual viral particle. And again, like a Microsoft update, or like a a virus, as we call them, a program, information that comes in and and sort of messes up some part of your computer, or changes something so it can't communicate, or it becomes diseased, it stops working, or becomes cancerous, starts infecting the rest of your computer. Same essential metaphoric process. Extracellular vesicles may serve as a treatment for COVID-19 virus, and that's the important part, because what we're finding, or what they are finding, is that these exosomes are used in treatments. For instance, they have they have stem cell exosomes that they're using for treatment, because what an exosome does in a normal process is it fights inflammation. What does COVID do? It causes inflammation. It causes the cytokine storm and all that stuff inside the lungs, because hey, guess what? You have the ACE2 receptor, which it's designed as a biological weapon to attach to through the exosomal process, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what you have, hopefully that makes sense. Um, because you got to understand that exosomes serve a great purpose in the body. They're always constantly repairing things, and stem cell exosomes will actually repair basically any cell in the body, which is why they're being looked at as this sort of miracle, uh, thing, and also why um, they're looking at exosomes as a vaccine. All right, and that's what's scary about this current vaccine that's coming up, is it's the first time that they're not putting the virus necessarily into the vaccine, or the actual SARS-2 particle that's infectious or viral. They're actually using they're reprogramming exosomes and inserting artificial or synthetic DNA or RNA in order to reprogram synthetically your DNA, because RNA, of course, infects DNA, and reprograms it so that you're now, I don't know if it's immunity would be the correct word, but the idea is to use those exosomes to actually stop the spread, because that's what an exosome usually does. So if the exosome that's injected into you can be made to be resistant, or reprogram your endosomes to be non-infectious, or resist the coronavirus, uh, you know, receptor process and transfer of information, the theory then is that you'll be sort of this new transhumanist model of being immune to the virus. Okay.
Yes,
Now,
I've heard them say that their mRNA vaccines are to turn the human body into the bioreactor.
hmm
Yeah, to produce
right.
the.
And if you go to the transhumanist forums, and they're really talking about this a lot, because they're all so excited, they're foaming at the mouth, because they're finally getting their transhumanist technology, their synthetic biology, and all that stuff into the mainstream. Nobody in their right mind should be getting something synthetically. That is basically like opening up your computer, taking down your firewall, and saying, "Hey, infect my computer." Right? It's the same metaphoric sort of process, and really, that's how they think about it. Now, what you have out here are these people who are suggesting that viruses don't exist, that everything is caused by the basically that. I'll go back to the murderer, right? How does the murderer, if I'm a murderer and I want to kill somebody in New York, but I'm in New Jersey, how am I going to get to New York to kill that person? Well, I'm going to hop on a train. I'm going to hop on a vesicle, a vessel, something to take me right to the place where I want to kill or infect. So they're actually suggesting that the healthy exosome somehow, right, and they actually use the word poison or some other way. In fact, let me read straight from what this guy says, because it's just it's patently false what what's his name says. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna pull this up real quick, um, and then we can go back to our normally scheduled stuff. Viruses are exosomes, is what this guy is saying. which are excretions of toxic cells, right? And that they're not transmittable. And the whole thing is just it's just patently ridiculous because you can pull up so many other types of reports. Let me just the role of exosomes in infectious diseases, for instance. Here's from PubMed. It's an exosome is a nanovesicle that buds from the endosomal compartment inside a cell. It is produced and released by all kinds of mammalian cells. The vesicle contains a variety of proteins, lipids, mRNAs, and miRNAs. These components are specific to the origin of the exosomes and contribute to cell communications. So day-to-day business, right? Look, it's like everybody piles into New York, and each one of those little people are employees or representatives of some corporation, so they're kind of like exosomes, and they deliver their information, and they're constantly connecting with each other in metaphoric way. Recently, it's been reported that a few single cell eukaryotic pathogens, we are that, such as Cryptococcus neoformans, and another one I can't pronounce, and Donovixian secrete an exosome and influence the host immune system. Okay, so viruses, in other words, viral materials, viral cells, secrete their own exosomes because they're cellular based. In addition, it has been observed that cells infected by intracellular pathogens are capable of secreting an exosome, which is involved in the fate of the infection. So normally the exosomes would be there to stop the infection, to rebuild the cells and do whatever needs to be done in the body. Furthermore, retroviruses recruit the host's endosomal compartments. Well, what are the endosomal compartments? Remember, that's what actually holds all those exosomes and releases them in order to generate viral vesicles, which are similar to the exosome. So here's a guy saying viruses don't exist, there are only exosomes. Yet, again, exosomes are kind of the good guys in the body until they're infected by something viral that transfers that information, that bad information, into the biological knowledge into the exosome, and then the exosome carries it to some place, delivers it, and then that cell does the same thing, and suddenly you have a viral infection, meaning that the infectious matter is virally reproducing itself through the exosomal process. So most of the exosomes involved in infectious biology can either spread or limit an infection based on the type of pathogen and its target cells. Well, the coronavirus, as we call it, the SARS-2, SARS-1, and SARS-2 has been specifically manufactured in a lab so that it can be studied, as they say, as a biological weapon to uh, specifically infect through target cells that target the ACE2 and CD4, CD9 receptors, specifically CD9. All right, so an exosome may be an appropriate candidate for a vaccine therapy, is the conclusion, because of course they can reprogram the exosome, send it back into the body, which brings up the whole transhumanist can of worms, right? I mean, the downward or the downline effects of that. Who knows what that's going to do in, uh, to the DNA chain. There's just so much. There's so many problems. It's kind of like CRISPR. You change one slice of DNA, that's going to affect things a million slices down the road and cause cancer or cause this, cause that. So, anybody who would get this type of vaccine has to be really nuts or just completely uninformed. And
Or
as
suffering
far
from mind control.
Well, yeah, and see that's the problem is now people are suffering from this type of ridiculousness that this guy is promoting, and now I'm getting comments on my movie that people don't believe viruses exist, therefore they're not going to watch the movie because, of course, why watch a movie about a virus or a viral thing called SARS-2 that is admitted to be a biological weapon in the movie, but you don't get that far because you don't believe viruses exist. This is like not paying attention in class because you believe the Earth is flat, and so why would you listen to the science or anything else behind the round Earth? This is basically a religious belief that people are getting, which they're looking through a lens of that religion, and they're saying, "Well, I don't believe," and therefore I'm not going to even look at the evidence because I don't believe. So that is what these people, especially this guy.
Is it Kaufman?
Kaufman and Dr. Andrew Kaufman. And here's what he says. What I think is happening, and when I challenged him on this uh, through a third party, he said, "Well, I don't have any facts. I don't have any research to prove this. It's just my opinion." And I'm like, "Oh my God, that's scientism to a T, right? That's the scientific belief, not science, but scientism, right? This artificial religious belief that science has all the answers, and all I have to do is think something will be true, and somehow science will prove it, right? What I think is happening is that first of all, there are really not pandemic levels of people getting sick from whatever is going on. The numbers are far less than the typical flu season. Now, in Utah, our hospitals are full, and yet they'll show pictures of empty hospitals. Say this proves that COVID doesn't exist. No, it proves that they've shut down hospitals to a lot of things, and so they're not putting people in hospitals, and yet the hospitals that are separate for COVID, of course, are overfilled, and they're starting to open new hospitals. In other words, the ICU units, the intensive care, they're overburdened. Right now, for some reason, people again they hear this, they see pictures, or they hear, and yes, there's been a lot of bad shit going on. There's been a lot of bad practice of people being put on ventilators, which is the worst thing you can do for someone with COVID, right? Because it's a deep lung infection, because it was biologically uh, reorganized to infect the deep lungs, which is a gain of function because most infections happen up in the throat area because of the temperature, but COVID or SARS-2, as well as the other SARS and MERS, were specifically designed to go deeper into the lungs and attach to those receptacles. So we're right. So what I believe is causing this illness is that there is some kind of insult that occurs that's causing the damage, and then there's a reaction to it, which is the production of exosomes. That's his theory, which in and of itself is like a child speaking that's never studied or saw something on exosomes and just maybe was stoned and had a theory all of a sudden. I don't know. Um, when we were testing for this supposed virus, we were actually testing for these exosomes, which confirms that there is some kind of unhealthy process that's going on in the body. Of course, that's how viruses or viral matter spreads through the exosomal process. So you're saying viruses don't exist? Well, yeah, they're inside the exosomes because that's how it transfers. I um I talked about the things that can cause production of exosomes, and I believe, whenever a scientist says "I believe," you gotta just step back for a moment. I have no scientific proof whatsoever. I believe that those represent the cause of the illness, and I think that the possibilities are that these are some kinds of poison. Okay, so he's actually saying something here that is when I read it, I almost couldn't believe it because if you go look up the definition of a virus in say the 1828 dictionary, do you know it's actually defined as pus, poison, venom, anything that causes a viral effect in the body. Poison, so he's saying I think the possibilities that these exosomes are being triggered by a poison, right? Poison is a virus. It is something that goes into the body and is infectious, right? So, so forgive me for calling the guy an idiot, but if you don't know that poison is a virus, is the very definition of virus, right? That pus is what is a viral material, an infectious substance. And then he says, certainly there's a lot of precedent for pneumonia type illnesses coming from inhalation of toxic substance. Again, toxic. What does that mean? It means infectious. It means something that's harming you. It's getting inside your body and doing something to these cells, right? So basically, we've got a guy here who I don't know if he's well. I'm gonna say this. Okay, Dr. Kaufman, while he has a lot of credentials that sound very impressive, he's a board certified medical doctor licensed in psychiatry and forensic psychiatry. Now, if you're not familiar with psychiatry versus psychology or any other medical field, psychiatry is basically what is behind the entire naming of diseases, the big book by Merck, that lists all the diseases, all the ways that pharmaceutical companies can make drugs depends on psychiatrists creating these diseases out of freaking thin air. Basically, if I, for instance, if I pull hair out of my head, I have a disease that can be cured, because I have a nervous twitch. I have a disease called something by a psychiatrist, and there's a drug for that, right? That's basically what this guy. That's his specialty. Okay, so he does have a bachelor's of science in biology at the MIT. To me, that means absolutely nothing because I just pulled up all these things, which I can send you all the links to, and everybody that's listening to this can look at themselves, right? Um, Exosomes and their role in viral infections and all. It just amazes me. Viruses hijack the exosome and do their thing. It's all right there. No one with any inkling to research could possibly confuse an exosome and a virus or say viruses don't exist, right? Unless you're pointing to a picture of a virus that's put up on a board to teach, and it looks like this perfectly round thing with spikes sticking out and receptors sticking out so that you can actually teach. Yeah, that doesn't exist. That is a artistic rendering of something that is microscopic, actually nanoparticle size. That, yeah, of course, it's not something that's real. You could say that's not real. It's a picture. You could say that the pictures that NASA puts up in magazines, oh, well, that's not real because NASA painted it. Well, NASA tells you they painted it so that you could see the difference between what's near and what's far. Yeah, absolutely. It's not real in that sense. But when you start confusing the concept of what is artistic and what is real, and then not believing things because they're a man-made representation of the real in order to show you how the thing works. You say, oh, that's not real. There's no pictures of it. There's no pictures of satellites. There's no pictures of this. There's no pictures of the Earth being round. There's no this. There's no right. This becomes the scientific or the flat Earth. And when I say flat Earth, I actually mean zetetic. So take flat Earth out of the equation. Look at zetetic thought, which is unscientific, does not use the scientific method, and it comes from this thing that I expose in the movie, which is this religion of science or scientism, not using the scientific method. And this is why we see that most scientific studies out there are failing to be reproducible. So because they're they're not following any kind of scientific method. Now I hope that you know that explains in great detail so that no one can possibly think that viruses don't exist in the form of viral particles that infect the endosome and then through the communication process, of course, send out the viral material, the viral DNA, whatever, all throughout the body. Hopefully, what I just explained, although it was long winded, completely defeats that theory. If it doesn't, like I said, I'll send you all these links to all these studies that explain it. And when you read the theory of Kaufman and some of these other people, I mean, the only way I can explain Kaufman's theory is that it's virally infecting a bunch of people who then don't have any rationale to hear the truth. And so he is a virus. His information is a virus that is infecting people and not allowing them to hear the truth. Now, whether he's a useful idiot or a term used by Lenin back in the World War One, I believe, to describe people who supported communism in other countries, or whether he's working for whoever wants people to think this way. I don't know. I don't know. But I'm very very wary and very I'm in a warning kind of mode because this guy's really doing a number on people. And even when I do the research trying to pull up these studies, there's the Kaufman theory or some other people who've written what appear to be scientific articles about this. And it's just so frustrating to have to cut through so much crap to get to the real stuff. So that's sorry to take up so much time, but I think it's so important for people to, especially because people are leaving these comments on and just drive-by shootings of all these YouTube videos and blogs. Oh, I don't believe viruses exist. Da, 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 da. It's exosomes. Da, da, da. And I'm like, no, people, you're completely brainwashed by your own alternative, movement. It's worse than the mainstream.
Well, hopefully that helps. Hopefully that helps. I mean, I can understand I can understand the I don't really feel that I trust a lot of information that's being put out by the official sources either. I don't question the existence of viruses because so much that I look at involves them being used as terrible little tools. But I mean, I do wonder with the whole the pandemic. I would call it the plandemic because it really seems like everything was lined up and ready for this thing, and now they're bringing in this technocratic nightmare world that's all riding on the back of this COVID SARS two.
Yeah, I mean,
I,
that's the thing. If you don't believe it, well, then tomorrow you're gonna become transhuman. I mean,
oh,
they're going to infect you with all this viral stuff using
well,
this process.
so how that's my question is how could we even be able to prevent being able or being infected with whatever they have weaponized against us? I'm not doubting that it exists, the COVID thing. I'm not doubting that so much as because it could be anything, right? Like we had talked before about it could be a delayed reaction, or it could just be, as I had said, I know they use viruses for gene therapies and things. They could be changing us. They could be preparing us for whatever their future plans are. But I mean, you see the contagion meme was pushed so much and people dropping like flies. I just haven't seen that. And I know my local hospitals, they had almost nobody there. Even I know they did close to the non-elect or the elective surgeries and all that
Well,
stuff.
you've got to consider one thing here that's very important, and they actually talk about this in this open panel discussion that's in the documentary. They don't talk about it much, but they do mention it. One is what I spoke about earlier, that you're supposed to. Well, I'm gonna let me just the conclusions I've come to and the research I've found is that we're all supposed to be getting chickenpox, measles, all these what we call diseases, right? Which used to be considered harmless. Those things come in, they reorganize your, they infect you. You have symptoms, and because of the symptoms, you have a response in your body, which has to do with this as well, the exosomal system, and your RNA, your excuse me, your epigenomic switches, like we said, are turned on and off. And so people who are vaccinated don't have the symptoms necessarily. They're still getting the disease. They're getting a dead virus or a barely living virus, and they might get a couple symptoms or none at all. They'll certainly have side effects because of all the ingredients in the vaccine. That's really, the virus is not even what you worry about. But what the virus or the dead virus or whatever it does is it stops you from having those symptoms and the full, what we would call, infection. Infection is not necessarily a bad word, in other words, right? You can have good information and bad information, like we said, right? So consider it like a Microsoft update from nature, right? The measles. It comes in, it reprograms your body so that you're immune to certain diseases and cancers. It's very necessary for children to get these diseases. Why they used to have chickenpox parties and measles parties. That's why on the Brady Bunch, all the kids were so excited they got to stay home from school from the harmless measles. Right? There was no deadly measles ever until until suddenly now they're making you scared of every disease because they want to promote these types of quote unquote vaccines, which aren't even vaccines anymore. Now they've moved on to transhumanism, basically. Um, so it's very important to understand that that's what your virome consists of. That is, again, look up the natal virome, or look up the virome as opposed to the other thing, which is the biome, I think. And you're going to see that you know your body is in a state of potential protectionism because you have all these things. They're passed on through the placenta, through the mother's milk, uh, which is why natural birth is so important. I mean, everything's just been so screwed up in our so-called health that we think that all these things are bad when in fact we're supposed to be getting them. And what they find is that those kids that get whooping cough and vaccines, and they get the all these different vaccines, chickenpox and uh, you know uh, measles, mumps, rubella, all that stuff. Well, yeah, they're developing a temporary immunity, or a temporary, I should say, not immunity, but an immune response, and they might go their whole lives without getting that childhood disease. However, they're also four times, 400%, 4,000% more likely to get certain types of cancer, four times as likely, or eight times as likely to get autism or some other uh, ADD, all those different types of things. And you've got all these doctors who, during the 1900s, are saying, I can't explain it, but all these kids that have been vaccinated, they're coming in, and they're all sickly, and they've got all these different problems. And the answer to that, again mentioned in the documentary by Robbie Robinson, he talks about the epigenomic structure getting switched on and off at some point in that documentary, and that's very important to understand, and that's why I'm making the documentary on this subject now. Um, so what we're talking about is we're not allowing nature or if you will, if Microsoft was nature, we're not letting Microsoft go in and do what it wants to do to our body. Nature is not being allowed to enter into our bodies and do what it's supposed to do through the viral process. That's how things are communicated from nature into us. That is the real relationship of the virome and these so-called viral particles, diseases as we call them, um, but they're really, it's that concept I think is so foreign to people now that they probably think I'm crazy for suggesting it, and yet I have all the research.
But this idea that they're putting out with that the COVID is spreading, that's their science experiment, right? That's not a
Well,
natural
I think
thing.
I think that so gain of function, which is the key word, meaning that means mutation. That's a simple term for what gain or loss of function is. And they do this in the lab to make the virus either more or less something. Now that can be more virulent, more contagious, more drug resistant, more anything, more deadly, more contagious, whatever they do to it. In this case, they made SARS more contagious by putting HIV spikes, which would then interact with the ACE2 uh, and CD9 receptors in the human body, which is why when you get the actual COVID, which could have mutated by itself in nature, this is why people are having such problems because it is attaching to that cell, which is found in the heart, found in the lungs, all the places where HIV actually attacks. And if you, in my documentary, I'm going to show you all these medications that they're putting out are HIV medications because what HIV medications or AIDS medications, if you want to call it that, what an HIV med does is it binds the receptors so that the virus cannot then attach and deliver its payload, right?
I saw something like that talked about on my local news. they they were saying, "Oh, it's like a cap we put on the end of the spikes." Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. You could dwindle it down to that simple of a concept. It prevents the spike that they gain of function that they put upon the coronavirus as a biological weapon, basically, to make it infectious to humans, so that they could study it in the lab. And apparently, it either escaped. I don't know whether it escaped manually or accidentally. I don't know if it was purposeful or not. I'm not here to suggest that. I can only tell you what it is, which labs it was in. It was in the Wuhan lab, which is right by that so-called market where they said it escaped, right? It was sold to China. Uh, I shouldn't say it was sold necessarily. It was transferred to China and funded by the by the National Institutes of Health through Anthony Fauci and his cabal of evil men that do all this. You got to understand, Anthony Fauci is behind all this research, behind highly pathogenic H5N1, bird flu. They dug up the Spanish flu, patented it, and then it got released accidentally, apparently, in just right after the patent was granted in 2009, I think, which made me make my first documentary. So they basically talk about in this documentary, in this open forum, is all the scientists that have been doing this gain of function research, and they openly admit that all these viruses that are infecting us and causing pandemics are escaping from labs and are man-made. They, H1N1, H5N1, H7H, N3 or whatever the combination is, they admit that SARS and MERS and everything else back in 2012 are released from, accidentally or on purpose. Nobody really knows, from labs. They admit it. It's not like
So
I'm just saying this. They admit it. That's why the thing is so long, because I took hundreds of hours of footage and knocked it down to 10 hours.
I have such trust issues that I can't put it out of my brain to consider that that the fear push that they have, because I don't doubt they're working on these little viruses, or the viral particles. They're working on their vectors to take and transfer things, to do all kinds of things, whether it's for insecticides or for gene therapies or to sicken people. I just have to wonder so much, like, especially because they come right out and say so much of it. I have a video on my channel of Cass Sunstein talking about how they know that when people are afraid, their brains don't work and they can't think of anything else. And like right now, we see in my city so many people running around with the masks on their faces, and I still see people with gloves on their hands and plastic bags to go through the bank line and things like that. And it just I have my doubts as to so much of it. I'm not saying that I don't think that the spread is out there. I just wonder what it's actually doing, and I don't
Well,
know.
you got to understand two things. One, hospitals are claiming a lot of deaths and saying it's COVID because they're getting paid to do
Yeah,
so. Okay,
yeah.
there's a whole other element that I have not. That's going to be part two of the documentary. Is the
As I was
story the
watching it,
story
so many things that I was like,
the
but that's coming in part two. When
the
I heard,
story behind the story, right? What's the story behind the story? The story behind the story is that they had a drill, and we're probably still in the drill, in October of 2019 that laid out the same exact thing that's happening now.
Event
It was a
201.
coronavirus, right? Right.
Yeah,
All of that stuff. Okay, we all know that, right? It's to look at it and say, yeah, but um you can't, how do I say this? You can't then say that because there had to be an actual virus. And man, I know a lot of people who have had this thing,
I know many that have
and
been diagnosed. Yeah,
and they say they've never been sicker in their lives, right? They've never had breathing problems like that before. Now, what that actually means as far as, did they have COVID-19? Did they have a naturally morphing or mutating? Because viruses mutate in nature. That is nature's way of, again, communicating to the population, right? All these viruses that are killing people are man-made.
and people were cleaning like crazy and spraying things on your shopping
and
carts, and the
and that's
air
the
and the
worst
stores,
thing.
oh yeah, and it just adds to the problem of
Well,
cold and
you've got a
flu
you've got a
season.
protective layer on your hands. Let's just take your hands. Everybody's using all this chemical, and what that's doing is it's removing all the oils from your hands so that your pores are then open to receive all the so-called germs, that whatever you want to call them, the viral particles, snot, pus, right? So all of a sudden you've erased the actual natural protective layer of oils that are on your skin, and you've killed the good uh, uh, bacterium and whatever that's there designed to actually prevent disease. So you're actually causing yourself to be more vulnerable by doing all these. Clean people are not healthy.
No,
I don't know if you've noticed that.
well,
The
and just going to the store, like I know we had talked earlier about I'm very sensitive to smells, but they hurt. Like it hurt my lungs to go in where they're spraying all of this stuff. Like I can only imagine how much this had to amplify. I would think cold and flu season. I like I said, I don't know what this thing is out there to do, because I get that there are that they have worked on it and they've weaponized it against us. What's it there for? I don't know. But I just I don't know. I think that their
well,
whole
what they
solution that they've brought on is that the real nightmare, the real bad thing.
what they did was they took something that in nature specifically is designed to, if you will, infect bats.
Yeah.
Okay, and they said, well, we want it to infect humans, even though in nature that's almost, I mean, I won't say it's not a possibility that it could happen in nature, but the way things are designed, there's a reason that rabbits can't have babies with lions, and humans can't have babies with horses, right? Every animal and humans and bugs, they all have specifically designed receptors. And so if I were to take bat coronavirus and try to infect you with it, it wouldn't work because I'm trying to put a square spike into a triangular receptor. It's not going to work, right? So what they do to gain a function is they add something. They add the square, the triangle. They add, so now all of a sudden that bat coronavirus has the ability to infect humans, and it's going to deliver something that's not meant for humans. And then it's a very well known fact that they can dig out the flu virus, they can dig out these different types of viruses. Ebola is a coronavirus, by the way. There's a lot of different coronaviruses out there. The common cold is a coronavirus. Ebola, all these different diseases are considered corona because corona is simply the shape of the virus. It looks like a crown. If you go and you get a Corona beer, it's called Corona, and it has a crown, a little crown with little things and a ball, a circular ball on the end. That's the crown. Okay? That's why it's called Corona. I know there's all kinds of theories. Oh, Corona it's called coronavirus because the Corona and the sun and 5G and all these. No, folks, reel in the conspiracy theories and look at what these people are admitting they've done. This is why I made this documentary, because they're admitting it. If you still say you don't believe, after the very scientists who are responsible for this gain of function research, who in all the journals and articles and everything tell you how they did it, then they put it out there on the freaking cloud so that anybody can then recreate that virus genetically on basically a 3D printer, which is, anymore they can just create these things out of genetic material, right? Kind of like growing meat. They, they, you got to understand the whole debate in the first place was, okay, great. You've just created highly pathogenic H5N1, which kills 60% of the humans it infects. However, you then cannot infect another human. It has to go from the bird to some animal like a civet or a ferret or a whatever, something similar to a human that has similar receptors, and then into the human body. But a human can't pass it to a human. So what do? They admit it openly. We took all these viruses, especially H5N1, and which already kills 60%, and we made it contagious to humans. It can't happen in nature, and yet we're going to do it anyway to study it just in case it happens, but we know it's not going to happen. The only way it can happen is if we do it,
One
right?
of
So,
the people that I saw speaking in your movie about to that panel, the big long section on the panel on gain of function, was when Lori Garrett came up there to talk about how uh, she was she was calling for biosurveillance for everything. She didn't want them just to look at the one thing, and that reminds me so much of George Church and how he wants to have, or he had always wanted, and now he talks about that he's getting the bio weather map, like to be able to be watching out for everything. And I have another video that I showed someone else's or their video talking about these contraptions that they want to put all over the place to be constantly sampling the air and sampling the people going by and everything to just check and to watch. That's I hope you don't mistake. I'm not doubting they do this research, because I think these guys are sickos. I've read Biology of
absolutely.
Doom, Ed Regis's Biology of Doom, and I don't doubt that they're open to killing anybody whenever it happens to suit them. And but I see a lot of the fear shutting off people's minds. I mean, the fact that there are people that don't want to give me a hug. There are people that they're afraid of me when I'm perfectly healthy. And I get it. I also know people that have been diagnosed, but the diagnosis was their swabs are put into a machine, and then this COVID interpretive
Okay.
software is what's telling us. And
Right, right, right. But
the technocrats are winning big time,
I couldn't agree with you more. And I'm not going to disagree that there's a lot of disinformation out there. I'm not talking about the disinformation. I'm talking
yeah,
about the real information that is, as far as I'm concerned, it's undeniable because, again, they're admitting it.
yeah.
They're selling you how they do it. They're putting up online how to do it so that anybody with the right equipment could do it in their garage and release it.
And we have
Right?
sickos like Josiah Zahner, the guy he sells the goods to do this sort of stuff, and he teaches people for free on YouTube how to do these.
Right,
Yeah,
right. There's so much disinformation out there, and we've certainly just talked about a lot, some of it with Kaufman, right? But you can't let the disinformation prevent you from looking at the real stuff, right? That's no different than religion. That's
yeah,
no different than scientism. That's no different than anything that prevents you from looking at what is established as truth or fact. And there is a difference between those two things, obviously, because in science there is no there science doesn't uncover source of things. It uncovers facts, and those facts can be altered or changed. That's the scientific method. You never really have a final theory because it can always be improved upon and closer to the truth or the source. But in scientism, this thing, that's not what they're interested in. They've turned science from the study of nature to the recreation of it. And that's what
absolutely.
is so concerning. They want to recreate all life in their image, which means they have to kill everything that's living there's no profit, there's no control unless you create something new. That's how patents work. That's why they're constantly creating new drugs and getting rid of old drugs, because not because they don't work, they actually work better than the new stuff, but they're not they're then now you can get it generically and you don't have to pay anything. So they constantly have to create new or novel things in order to patent them. And trust me when I say that all of these viruses that we're talking about, COVID, SARS, Ebola, anything that is recreated in a lab is patented. So you wanna understand further that viruses exist or viral things exist that are man-made. All you have to do is go look at the patents.
Yeah,
Spanish flu is patented. When they dug it out of the lungs of the Inuit Eskimos in the permafrost in Alaska, put it into a lab, recreated it, genetically sequenced it, patented it, and then released it. Okay, the patent protects the corporation so that I can't do anything to try to cure the disease unless I get permission because it's their property.
money
So
makes money.
so
Yeah,
yeah, you're getting to the point where you won't even be able to touch your own body without permission from the corporation that owns it. I
yeah,
guess the worst part of this. The worst part of this is that the main patent holders are government and universities. And that's something I'm going to cover in the documentary coming up. Is the patent wars that go on in universities? They're not there for education. They're there to create new things, whether that's biological things, synthetic things, anything that's patentable. That's what they're there for. Okay, that's their number one business. Sports, number two business. Education is probably their number four or five, business. Right, all the endowments and all the stuff that goes. You would not believe, where did eugenics start from? Well, of course, American university system. That's because all these scientistic people who aren't practicing science but are practicing everything but science, or the scientific method. They're the ones that infiltrated all these institutions. That's why it's so important to understand. That's where all this Big Bang stuff comes from. All the anti-God and anti-nature and anti-this and transhumanism stuff comes from inside those universities, inside the government. And this was warned about long ago by your C.S. Lewis's, your back in the 1920s by professors and scientists who were saying, look, these people, this scientism, this religion of science is infiltrating and taking over all these institutions and government. And that's why we're in this place we're in. Now, there's one other thing that I don't think people have considered. Okay, if the NIH funded all of these diseases that are affecting people, have you considered that government is therefore liable? No one should be paying for any medical care. No one should be paying for anything. And in fact, I'm noticing they're saying the vaccine is going to be free. I wonder why.
And I think you said that wrong. It's Medikill, right?
Oh,
Medikill.
sure,
Yeah.
sure. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously, I'm not, I'm not pro doctor. If you have a broken bone, go
Yeah.
to a
Emergency
doctor.
medicine, that's one thing.
That's what they're specialized. That's their wheelhouse. That's what you should be going to a doctor for. You have diabetes or cancer, anything else that is not a bone sticking out of your skin, or a burn or whatever. You should not be going to doctors,
No.
right? The American Medical Association was sued by I think it was the chiropractic or alternative medicine or whatever. They were sued way back when for a massive propaganda campaign against anything that wasn't medical science, right? They big propaganda. So everybody now thinks that everything but an MD is a quack, which is it's actually the opposite, right? Those who prescribes all these poisonous drugs, and all drugs are poisons, right? So
Saw that on
we're
many a label in your recent trailer. Poison.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's amazing. And the studies, the first trailer I put out, just it basically shows that the doctors are the third leading cause of death in America. They're the number one leading cause of bankruptcy, number one cause of harm, number one cause of pain and suffering, right? It's amazing when you actually look at the statistics. But of course, they've arranged the system to where they're not. There's no reporting mechanism for that. So again, when someone dies and they write, well, COVID complications, they could have died from receiving the wrong surgery or the wrong medication or the right medication for that matter, and they're going to get more money by saying it's a COVID related incident, and there is no place on their death certificate to write that the hospital killed them, that the doctor killed them.
Shocker.
So it all goes under the carpet. It's amazing when you delve into what this documentary is going to reveal about the medical, about the universities, about the whole thing. I mean, talk about a conspiracy beyond measure. I mean, it's just amazing.
I'm
Really
looking
is amazing.
forward to part 2. That's next month, you're thinking, right?
Well, I'm putting out Lethal Injection 2 now, which I've been working on a long time, but I stopped it because of the COVID things. I felt, well, that's really important that we should, you know, when I heard the terms gain of function and dual use and all that, dual use research of concern, basically, the one lady put it best. She said that it's similar to the discovery of nuclear fission, where yeah, you can power a whole city or you can destroy the whole world. So it's a dual use, right? And if you think about it, what isn't dual use? What is it that DARPA and the military are not interested in as a dual use thing? Oh, yeah, we're going to support and fund all these so-called legitimate research projects, but we're really taking all of these biological weapons. And that's the important part. Biological weapons research and the research that these so-called legitimate scientists are doing to study what could become a biological weapon, it's the same exact thing. There's no difference whatsoever between what government calls legitimate, friendly, peaceful research and biological weapons research. In fact, one guy in there who works for Homeland Security said, if we were doing the same type of research that we're talking about in this forum, then which is H5N1, SARS, MERS, all these different things that they're adding to and recreating in the lab, we would be charged under the Geneva Conventions for making biological weapons. But because again they use the flattering title, it's friendly, peaceful, or whatever's in the Biological Weapons Act, they basically put a clause in the Biological Weapons Act that says as long as what you're doing is labeled by government as peaceful, then it's not considered as something that you could get fined, arrested, or for that matter hanged for creating biological weapons. And so you've got basically an organized criminal syndicate led by Anthony Fauci, who openly tells you in this documentary that he's in charge of funding through the NIH all of this research into creating biological weapons, but they're calling it legitimate research. They're calling it something else, and therefore it's somehow not biological weapons research, even though if I was doing biological weapons research, I'd be doing the same exact thing.
So that's kind of the path I want to go to next. But real quick, before we go over to the next thing, I wanted to say back when we were talking about the empty hospitals, that also plays into this remake of the medical system. I know I've heard Peter Diamandis and Ray Kurzweil talk about how that it's that whole sick care that's going away. So they don't need those now. How I said in my town, we haven't had that much going on in the hospitals. Even the official numbers that our newspaper gives us, which are then contradicted by what the state's saying. But I watch a lot of that, what they're reporting. But that they have had to do layoffs and all sorts of things because they canceled so many surgeries and so much of their other activities going on.
Yes,
So
exactly. So
an implosion, perhaps,
so the natural consequence to saying, well, we're not going to see I'll put it to you this way, because I know a lot of people in the medical profession, and I don't know why we're even friends anymore because we have these debates all the time. but and I can't help myself. But you know, uh, insurance. Let's take insurance. Insurance is one of the major causes for people to go to the hospital. Why? Well, at the end of the year, I see that I still have money I can spend on my insurance, my total insurance output, right? So I can spend $2,900 of my own money and then get unlimited medical care or whatever, however the insurance thing works. Or they have a checkup left over that they haven't used. And so at the end of the year, starting in November through December, nurses and doctors hate it because all these people are going to the hospital for absolutely no reason to get checkups or whatever, uh, filling in the insurance quotas for no other reason because hey, I have insurance and I'm gonna use it. Damn it! So all these healthy people are going to the hospital for absolutely no reason, and a lot of those doctors see it as a profit model, and they'll prescribe them some drug because hey, what do the commercials tell me? Ask my doctor if Zutruda is right for me, right? Tell my doctor that I need this drug, right? That's how they're advertising it. That's another thing I cover in the new documentary. So that alone, when you cut that out, is going to get rid of so many hospital visits. Think about that, right? Just that one thing alone, right? Then you got people that are afraid to go to the hospital, which they damn right should be, because again, hospitals are like the number one spread of viral diseases. One of those I'll never forget. Um, a friend of mine worked in a nursing home, and there's this wow, what is it? There's a very very common viral disease.
C.
It's
diff.
it's a spore, and
Yeah.
if that spore, I mean, people basically throw up shit,
Oh,
poop,
it took my
and
grandmother down. Yep.
yeah, yeah. Well, if that spore and it's got hooks on it, right? And that spore, it's a viral thing. The hook hooks into you and gives you C. diff. And uh, a friend of mine tells this story about how he was taking care of this guy named Stubbs. He had no arms and legs in a nursing home. They called him Stubbs. He called himself Stubbs. And he got C. diff, and he's like, "I'm not feeling good," and he was right in front of him, and Stubbs just threw up
Oh,
everything that was backed up, from his colon came through his mouth,
oh God.
and he says he stripped, and he happened to live right across the street from the hospital. He stripped, ran down the street in his underwear right to his shower because he was like, "Oh crap!" Because yeah, he had lettuce, and he's like, why they have taco night in nursing homes? I don't know, right? So his lettuce and shit hanging, literally poop hanging from him, and he runs home, but he gets C. diff, right? That's how viral C. diff is. Is it a virus? Well, no, it's C. diff, and it's viral, right? If you don't believe in viruses, then you don't believe in C. diff.
Yeah. That was a lovely story. Oh,
Thank you very much. It's
oh
actually a hilarious story when he tells it, because and imagine this, someone running down the street in their underwear covered in poop
boy.
that came from someone's, and lettuce and taco bits. It's kind of funny.
Oh boy, oh boy.
Well, you could just edit it out if you want
No,
to.
no, no, no. We'll keep it. Everybody needs to hear.
Well, I hear these kind of stories all the time, and the infections, the viral infections that go on in hospitals, would makes me, I don't go to hospitals. Period. End of story. I'll go to a clinic if anything, because we have a good clinic here that's not part of any corporate structure. But if I can avoid the hospital at any measure, I will, because God, where are you gonna catch the worst kind of diseases?
Yeah.
And again, I don't know how you can not believe in viral things. It just doesn't even make sense.
Well, another thing that you talked about in the documentary or the movie, yeah, it's a documentary. Yeah, another thing that you talked about in there with this whole notion of the dual use, you went into the Insect Allies program, and yeah, and the weaponizing of the tiny life to spread whatever. And I know, I thought I had it sitting here by me where they were talking about how, oh, that could be such a great thing for crops and for farmers and for defense, but also for as a weapon against to take out another country's whole crop for to starve them out and have to use whatever aid food that we send in. I did air quotes when I said food, but yeah. So do you want to talk about the insect allies some? I know I've looked at that bit with some of this agriculture stuff that I've been looking at, how they want to weaponize the plants and turn them into sensors all around everywhere. And
Well, the key word, I think, the key phrase that the woman says on that particular um, documentary that I show, the little mini documentary, I tried to use as official a sources as I possibly could, and that really explains it well. Is the good and the bad, again, the dual use of basically injecting insects or exposing them to something that then can go out and infect plants. There's all kinds of plant viruses, all kinds of things, right? The tobacco virus and all that stuff that they discovered a long time ago. Um, but but what she says in there is that until now, these viruses don't actually alter the DNA of the plant, and that only man-made viruses can do that. Um, that's the scary part, because suddenly you're introducing something into nature that will alter the very life structure of that plant that's been around for whatever, thousands, millions, however many years it's been around. Okay, that is the scary part, because they're not just talking about, you know they're talking about fundamentally altering nature in a way that cannot be predictively forecast or understood, right? This is purely experimental. Everything they're doing is experimental. And that's
yeah,
the scary part. We and plants and insects are the guinea pigs. And that's why I'm calling for all this. This must be stopped. And I'm not saying it must be stopped legally. I'm saying it must be stopped at all costs. Because you're not talking about, we're no longer talking about theories and stuff. They're actually putting this stuff into practice. We all know about, for instance, Bill Gates and his mosquitoes.
Yeah.
The worst idea you could possibly, come up with. And obviously, how are parasites and other things delivered? Through mosquitoes. How is malaria? Through mosquitoes, right? Again, viral things. And you can call them viruses. It's okay, as long as you understand. It's okay, people. You don't have to fall to all the peer pressure of the alternative movement that never moves, right? Because they don't believe anything exists. The flat Earth mentality, right? So you're you're talking about using bugs, and you heard the part where they were talking about opening uh, farms all over the world where they would raise just trillions of bugs, and then whenever some emergency happened,
Yeah.
they would infect those bugs with whatever the emergency was, release those bugs so that they would virally infect the plants and save the plants or whatever the purpose is. So essentially, they're doing exactly what we're talking about. They're sending out a bug. The bug is carrying the viral information, which it then transfers to the plant, right? Now, the dual use concern is that those bugs could then, of course, be reassigned something deadly that would kill the plant or kill humans or kill all life on Earth.
Yeah.
Right? That's dual use. That's the military aspect. That's the DARPA aspect, Defense Advanced Research Project. Right? The whole thing is insane. And then, of course, what do? They put how they do it. They put it out on the internet for anybody to see and copy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean they're looking to change the plants in so many ways with the tiny life in the soil and the tiny life inside the plants that they're these microbial consortia, the itty bitty stuff that's and how do we know what they've put that how do we know
Well,
what they've
but see, that's just it. I don't think they know. I mean,
yeah
I don't think
they
I.
run
It's
experiments and they talk about how we looked at all the pathways, all the things that happen to this plant. Well, what if it's different things in the water? What if there's different things in the area around where it's growing? You don't know everything that that's going to do. You're just you know what this one control thing maybe does. But sorry, you were talking.
yeah, no, uh, it's it's nuts. I and again, I'm telling you right now, if you didn't get the message from the documentary because I wasn't clear, we're in a war. We're in a war against this scientific group of people who, in my opinion, are psychopathic or at least sociopathic. They do not care about the results of their research. They do not care what happens to you or me, or for that matter, I don't know if they care that the whole human population is at risk. I really am starting to think that they're not suicidal, they're genocidal of the whole human race. I don't because they're more interested in the after existence, transferring consciousness to computers and all that. The Matrix. Think about the Matrix, all those artificial bugs and artificial, synthetic life, basically, is what they want to see happen. And I don't think they care what happens to the rest of what we call existence, of nature, of reality, of life itself. I don't think they care. Um, some of them do, and those were the ones that were really like, hey, we're really, this is really dangerous. We're talking about things we can't control, and that's why it was a debate. But I I, I gotta tell you, this is a war. It is a war against nature. It is a war against God. It is a war against existence. It is a war against the natural order. And it is, in my opinion, the duty of people like you and myself, and anybody who's listening to this who has any kind of understanding of what's going on, these people must be stopped at all costs. There is no law that should possibly get in the way of the law of nature when it comes to literally destroying nature. I mean, you're destroying any ability for the laws of nature to regulate and control things, and that ultimately means, of course, that we're going to need this transhumanism stuff to live, because they're gonna taint everything. There's not going to be anything left on, and I'm not exaggerating here. You know, I'm not
No,
exaggerating
I know
in
you.
any way. There's
Yeah.
not going to be anything left that is real, including you. And the more that we accept what is the mark, basically, and the more technology or art, right? Technology is not science. That was the last part of the documentary. I wanted to make sure that people understood technology is not science. Technology is defined as art. Art is that which is opposed to science, because science is the study of nature. You cannot study art and call it science. It's not the same thing. What they're doing is they're replacing the real with art, with technology, with synthetic biology, with synthetic life, whatever that means. And I can't tell you, and I can't stress enough, a that is an assault on your well-being, your children's well-being. That is an assault on life itself. That is not something that the legal law should have any uh, leeway upon good men. If good men do nothing, male and female, if we do nothing about this, if we allow this to keep going because, hey, Anthony Fauci and the NIH says it's okay and it's legitimate research, even though it's biological weapons and the Geneva Convention should be enforced, and the Biological Weapons Act created by Francis Boyle, he's calling for it to be enacted. That these, you know, even I don't know how to say this except that this is no longer a peaceful act. This is war. This is a war against you, a war against your fabric of being. I just can't. I can't stand that nobody is doing anything. I'm trying my best to get the information out, of course, and that's my lot in life, because you have to have the science, you have to have the facts, the truths, you have to understand what it is you're fighting before you can fight it. You have to have the justification, you have to have the moral uh, compass to drive you to fight this. I can't stress enough, this has gone beyond anything rational, reasonable. This is the genocide of the entire uh, 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 biome of Earth.
And
And
they put it under the heading of saving the earth, all of
yes,
this, it's yeah, total confusion on that. They're open completely about it. I'm with you on that. They are coming for every bit of life. Like George Church's book Regenesis, the right on the cover it says how synthetic biology will reinvent nature and ourselves.
that is the scariest thing I've ever. That is saying I am God.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. Using technology, the computers, the computational design, which they wanted to create the God in the machine. That's,
Dude,
yeah,
and maybe I'm not, maybe I haven't made myself clear. You're either going to fight this with everything you have without regard to these legal measures that protect this kind of behavior, or you're going to die.
yeah. Because
I mean, or you're going to live in hell.
George Church wants to turn you into a mirror of yourself, and so that no viruses or the cold can get to you.
But then
It,
you're
you're not,
not part
yeah,
of nature anymore,
yeah,
because remember what we talked about, those viruses, those harmless measles and chicken, that is nature communicating. That is God communicating with you. I can't stress that enough. You're supposed to get those.
yeah,
That's why they're there.
yeah. It's I have to go to another thing before I don't know how long we can go on here, but for people talking about the taking this stuff into us, when you showed that beetle, I think that's one of the most disturbing things I've watched lately because they're laughing. They're
Yes.
laughing. They're like, is he struggling? And they're laughing. And anyone that wants to step right up and get their get their neural lace or the nanobots in their blood that maybe could pass the blood-brain barrier, or and even the people getting their children those cochlear implants. I mean, my goodness.
Well, you also have to then consider, okay, so you have this program where they're going to use bugs to do certain things.
Yes,
The
yes,
dual use of that would be the military being able to literally use a Wii joystick, right, a
yeah.
Nintendo joystick to control the bug, which is what they do.
I've seen him do it with the dragonfly. Yeah.
Exactly. To deliver that to, oh, okay, we want to take down China or Russia or the whatever, you know, this farmer, Monsanto, now Bayer wants to take down its competition. Well, I can drive that bug, deliver its payload, and then make it self destruct, and no one would ever really know that it was me who infected those plants.
You could
And
take
that
down the food system and
you
have people
could, you
eating
could,
biogoop. Everybody
which
would
which
have
which
to.
means you control the food system because only your food will grow. Wasn't that the Monsanto model?
Yep.
Right? Only your plants are immune to the poison that is Monsanto fertilizer slash pesticide, right? And only our bugs can, if you want your flowers to be pollinated, well, you have to use our genetically modified bees because all other bees have been wiped off the earth
Well, I just
because
saw they just came out with the first insect vaccine. They would get to give.
oh my god, I don't think about it. This is nuts, right?
Well,
I
and they have bee vectoring technologies where they have the bees climb through on the bottom of the hive is a tray. They put these in organic strawberry fields, but where the bees have to walk through a tray of different there were bacillus strains, or spores, but all kinds of biological material they have to walk through, and then they deliver it to the plants so they don't mold.
I have a theory. You've seen these different science fiction dystopia utopia type of films that have domed cities. Well, why do you think they're creating the domes?
Keep out that.
To keep out what they created in the first place, to make it livable, right? And I gotta say, man, if there's any, if for some reason someone out there is a billionaire, I'm looking for someone that will fund a community of people and actually build those types of domes. That's how concerned I am about this. This is within the next 10 years that something bad is going to happen. I'm telling you. Um, to actually be able to grow clean food, you're going to have a frickin' barrier between your plants and the biological constructs that are being created to kill those plants so that you have to buy Monsanto or Bayer seeds. That's I mean, if you think I'm kidding, if you think this is all about not just about recreation, but about patenting and owning that which you recreate. All right, I seriously have been talking about this for a long time, and now I'm in the urgent mode that I want to start essentially a monastery and have these uh, domed places where you can grow food that won't be infected by what these people are doing. Because I can tell you right now, no matter how much I plead for people to act, everybody's going to sit on their asses and say, I don't believe in viruses until there's nothing. There's nothing left to believe in. I mean, it's all going to be destroyed, and no one is acting. I'm at a loss for what has happened to my fellow humans, that this is happening. It's being allowed to happen, but and everybody's talking about it. Nobody's doing anything about it. I don't understand. I don't. I don't. I mean, we deserve to die. We deserve what we're going to get if we do not act. That's all I can say. Your children will have no future. They will have no life to have a future because they're either going to be forced to accept transhumanist things, artificial, technology, in order to live in the environment they're recreating, or they're going to die.
Yeah.
And maybe I sound nuts right now, but
No,
this
you don't.
this
You
is
don't. We
this
need
is
the
all
math.
coming true.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a nightmare. Why do you think I named my channel what I did? Because it has to stop. And it's people are that all that science is real and all these science, but it's not science, it's mad science. It's the scientism. Like,
It's scientism, and until you understand scientism, I'll tell you, people talk about technocracy. Technocracy is a tool. Scientism is the religion using the tool, right? All these different communitarianism, all these different things that we're all so afraid of, they all fall under scientism. Genetics, eugenics, it's all the same thing. This is finally the word I've been looking for to actually explain where all this craziness is coming from, where all these systems and all these things are coming from, where essentially the purveyors of controlled chaos are coming from. Is, who's going to create the matrix, who's doing all it. It's a religious cult that calls themselves scientists, or they have scientific thinking, right? But they're not using science in any way. It's completely the opposite of science. I just can't stress that enough. How important it is to understand scientism and the true nature of the Bible and Christianity is that God is nature. Nature is, existence. God is defined as existence. There was never supposed to be a debate or a belief and non-belief in quote unquote Jehovah or self-existence. The universe, everything that is not man-made, is nature, is God. We're supposed to be worshiping and cherishing that. But instead, these people, I believe, have turned us into idolaters, where we worship the idol or the image of God. And meanwhile, nature, they're destroying it, or at least that part of it which keeps us alive. We're supposed to be protecting nature. That is our religion, right? Anyone who's sane and not psychopathic and not assigned into scientism, which is opposed to nature, opposed to God, in other words, opposed to the law and laws of nature, right? That is what scientism is. And I can't stress enough that, this notion of God is nature, nature is God, the nature of the universe, the nature of existence, that is what is behind life itself, that is, including you. We're all part of it, right? That's what the definition of Jehovah is in the all the concordances, all the ancient texts. They're all the same, and we've been basically pulled away from that as the Bible is not Christianity. The Bible is about a religion of nature, a natural religion, not paganism. Paganism is polytheism. We're talking about everything is part of nature or God. That's so important to understand, and you can verify that. I mean, I'll tell you what you can do. Go to Webster's 1828 dictionary. Look up the word Jehovah as it's spelled, right? Then look up the word existence, and you're going to find that they're the same definition. God is existence, right? It's amazing to understand that, and I've spent years and years trying to explain that to people. I wrote books about it. I've been, stop idolizing things, stop worshiping images or concepts are man-made, and come back down to reality. Because if you don't start protecting that which sustains you and gives you life, you're not going to have it. You're not going to be. You're going to have to worship the artificial, right? What is God? God is everything not man-made. Start treating it with the respect and the worship it deserves. That's all I can say. That needs to become or re-become our religion, our true natural religion. That I don't know how to say it any other way, but that's where we're at right now. Got billions of people who believe in frickin' Catholicism and all these different things that have been set up to take you away from God, not to lead you to it. And that's why we're all suffering, because we're not part of nature. We're doing everything we can to separate ourselves through technology, through art, from God, from nature, right? This isn't even a religious thing when you really, the Bible is a book of law. It tells you how to live without artifice, without art, without technology, without all these things. It says deny all that stuff. That is how you worship God, by worshiping nature, worshiping reality, worshiping its law, right? That is what this battle is. It is a battle between those who have lost the ability to exist in their own nature and to worship it as the life force that keeps them in existence, and those who seek to destroy it, which you could say is Satan, right? If you want to, because all evil comes from men, all lies come from men, right? So that's the battle we're in. You don't have to become a religious freak. You don't have to join a church. You just have to understand that unless we start worshiping nature and its law, then and we as part of it, then we're all dead. And that means fighting to the death if necessary to protect it, because that's the only thing that keeps us alive. And I tell you, this misunderstanding, this purposeful misunderstanding, is a result of scientism. It is the same people who have taken over these institutions, including religions, that lead you away from the actual definition. And again, look it up. Look up all the concordances, all the anything you can find that's a Bible dictionary like Webster's or Easton's, and you're going to find the same thing. Look up the term self-existent God, or God is self-existence. Self-existence meaning it exists despite man. It's not a creation of man. And I tell you, if you put away all the religious magic and crap that you get from religions, that's what the Bible is. It is a guide for people to live in reality, in nature, without artifice, without names, without titles, without government, because you're self governing. You're following the law of nature. You don't need any other law. You're charitable. You don't need money. You don't need any of this stuff that drives us and drives all this technology. Now, again, if you want to call me crazy for saying that, if you want to suggest that whatever it is, I sound nuts or whatever, I don't care, because I think there's only a few people that are going to fight this anyway. The rest are just going to lay down and accept the mark, accept the technology, accept the implants, accept everything that's happening, because you don't worship God, you worship an idol. So, that's my lecture for the day.
No, thank you for that. That was good. I want to point out one thing, because how we had talked about how I had thought maybe whatever they're releasing, who knows what it could be doing to prepare us and to move us on to whatever purposes they have planned. That there is a group of people, and it's a cultural and breeding alliance, you might say,
Oh,
that is looking to that's looking to figure out how to edit and change for their own purposes. The book, we both have a copy of it, that I hope people aren't deterred by the title. People should look it up, and I'll link it in the description with all the other links. But the book Jewish Eugenics by John Glad, he says in there that Jewish religious tradition makes man a partner with God. How far can we or dare we go? He's there. It's an extinction situation for them, the way that he explains it in this book. So at all costs to push this, and then if they can't do that, they'll plug themselves into the machine. Backup copies. It's a great thing. But that
Well,
they're great guinea pigs.
well, and it's important to understand that when you say a cultural and breeding alliance, that's many families.
Oh yeah.
You're
It comes
right.
in all
The
shades.
word race actually means family. Now there can be real family, bloodlines, and there can be artificial families, and that's what that is. There is Jewish is not a race.
No.
That's very important. That's why people think this. They're talking about prejudice. No, in fact, when I do my segment on eugenics, what you're going to find is that there's black eugenics, there's white eugenics, there's depending on there's a huge Arab and Indian movement in eugenics, and what that means is they want to improve their race, their
I want
family.
good things for
Okay,
posterity.
right? They're interested only in improving their race. Why? Is it racism? Well, I mean, again, race means family, and they're talking about improving their own genetic makeup. So this is another example of dual use, if you will, because eugenics, if you are susceptible to that type of thought, it does sound good. You're trying to erase bad traits in people. You don't want to have a child that's going to be born with Down syndrome, for instance, if you're black, because that's where the majority of them happen. Or excuse me, sickle cell anemia, right? Anemia, because and it's not racist to say that, or maybe it is because race means family and blood. So yeah, technically, you want to acknowledge the fact that certain races or families, bloodlines, have certain diseases. Jews, as we call them, which again is a conglomerate of many races, blonde haired, blue eyed to black, right? Because, once, my favorite part of that book is when the prime minister said anyone who says they're a Jew is a Jew.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, you get all these Ethiopian blacks coming over. And what do they do in Israel but force sterilize them, right? Because they don't want a bunch of. Yeah, the whole thing is just insane because they're not a real family. They're not a real. That it's completely different when you're talking about a religious eugenics compared to the sort of original, hey, let's improve the race type of thing, right?
If
The
anything,
family.
by making eugenics this idea for people that it's a bad thing, it allows us to, as a society, weaken ourselves. They've weakened their enemies, that this group that is doing all of these sick things to us.
Well,
That
sure, because for every positive trait that you can think of, you can also think of 20 negative traits that you could introduce into a so-called race or family, right? Um, I mean, even if you look at blood types and different races or families trying to have children together, the only way they can have children is to lower the immune system so that the body doesn't attack the foreign invader. You're not supposed to have children with someone of a different, a negative or a positive blood type in certain instances. In order for that baby to grow, which has a foreign blood type to your own, so the baby, it wouldn't be allowed to grow in nature, right? That's not racist as the current term goes. That's how nature works. It's the same thing again as a monkey and a horse can't have babies.
yeah.
I mean, they're two different types of people, and that's okay. We have to acknowledge that because, hey, there's a whole list of Jewish diseases, there's a whole list of black diseases, a whole list of this disease, and they're all based on family. The the use of family or race in the modern debate is purely a weapon of division. And what I find so fascinating about that is that there is really only one racist group or family in the world. Well, I mean, several, and those are the royal families, right? They are actually claiming that because of their family, their race, their bloodline, that they are in power over every other bloodline, right? Whether it's your African princes and kings or your English ones or your, wherever. That is true racism. All the stuff that we're talking about, right? I don't like you because your skin is black. That's not actual race. Actual racism is the royal lineages.
And
That's true racism because
them.
race means family.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely nuts.
Oh my goodness.
But see, there again, people have to understand, man. There were just as many black eugenicists as there were white ones. There were just as many in every culture, and I don't think people really get that because, of course, they want to make one race the bad guy, and everybody has to be the good race, and right, it's a way
Divide us.
to divide, yeah, and it's working, and that needs to stop as well because meanwhile they're gonna kill us all.
Oh yeah, this group has a common goal they're working toward, and they're just pulling us all apart. Absolutely.
Yeah, so I mean, basically, we're a bunch of so-called racist people who don't believe in viruses. The two things that are there they're going to wipe out,
Oh boy.
wipe us out with. That is, yeah. It's. I mean, there is a certain amount of hilarity to the whole equation. I mean, a certain amount of insane paradoxical humor that you have to apply. How can we have possibly let it get this far, and how can we possibly let it go any further than it already has? Stop it now. Overall, we're all. Well, I'll put it to you this way: we might not be all dead. What we will be is spiritually dead. In other words, we will not be guided by our spirits. We will be guided by rote, mechanical, uh, transhumanist, artificial synthetic things. It will no longer be a spiritual life. Spiritual again refers to the real, to nature, to not to something outside of the body, but being part of everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh boy. Is there anything we haven't covered from your this volume, this part one from your that you would like to talk about here before we go today? Because I do have to go shortly here, but I know
Um,
I had all kinds of notes, but we've gone through. I mean, you went into the 2045 movement with the transhumanism. Yeah,
yeah,
oh golly, so many things. But, and
yeah.
yeah, wait, sorry, before you say what you want to mention, it's not a spoiler to say that the whole global governance structure, right? That's what the fundamental framework for their.
Oh no, I mean, look, there is no spoilers because it's us that are it's nature that's being despoiled. I mean,
Yeah.
who the I there's no this isn't entertainment, right? So yeah, you're not going to give away the plot of the story. You are the plot of the story. It is you who is being destroyed, you and your children. So yeah, by all means, don't hold back. I mean, that's something that someone who's trying to sell you something would say. I'm not selling you anything. I'm telling you, hey, it's act or die, right? So I'm not going to try to sell you something just to, you know, you get my
In fact,
drift.
you have nothing for sale. Right.
No, don't talk about that. It might ruin the plot of the story.
No. But
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing, as you were talking about earlier, with the computer sensors, the drones that'll watch you and take
Sample.
your temperature at all times and report you and this and watch. Yeah, the whole thing is about a structure of surveillance, basically, and it's one of the main subjects they cover in this because uh, when trying to justify gain of function research, surveillance is a big part of it because their goal or their excuse, I should say, is to create vaccines in case what they're creating in the lab ever actually happens in nature, or but then you have the fear that it's going to escape the lab even though it would never happen in nature, right? So they're creating these vaccines and the whole thing is nuts. And in order to do that, like with the bugs, you'd have to have bugs, big warehouses of bugs that you can infect with viruses that would alter the DNA or whatever of the plants, and you'd have to have this massive surveillance system. So in a way, they're using the diseases they're creating, or I should say, recreating, reinventing, and making worse. They're using those as an excuse, and every once in a while they're going to release one because how else are you going to justify what they're doing, right? Um, so they recreate the Spanish flu and then patent it and then release it a couple months after the patent goes through, right? What the hell? So they've done that to every virus known to man and probably a lot that are unknown. So you think Zika is natural? You think any of these viruses are natural? No, but what they are great excuses to set up a global surveillance system. And with the global surveillance system, of course, you're going to need biometric identification. You're going to need all these things that allow the synthetic life and artificial construct of the computers and the tracing and all that stuff to recognize you without you even knowing you're being recognized. Whatever you're carrying, the chip, the card, right? You're already walking into department stores and computers are reading your card and they know everything about you before you know leave the store. Why would you not just? I mean, you've already accepted it. You've already gone, as they say. You're already a cyborg because you have the phone.
Yeah.
You have the whole thing, this personal computer more powerful than anything they had 20 years ago, right in the palm of your hand. You're already a cyborg. You've already accepted it. Now it's just a matter of convincing you that it would be much easier if they put it in the palm of your hand, literally underneath the palm of your hand, or attached it to your chest, or whatever it is that makes the surveillance grid more easy. And that has to be a global surveillance. The whole idea, the whole uh, surveillance or identity 2020 and 2030 and Agenda 2030, which used to be Agenda 21, was to give everybody in the world a digital footprint, a digital identity.
So they could
Uh,
be landholders and things. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Mm.
So, yeah, this certainly plays into that. Now, again, there's so much we haven't covered, which is a lot of this type of stuff. The real reasons that you would release these types of things into the environment. The real reason you would lie about the results and lie about a real virus but a fake pandemic, right? Or you redefine the word pandemic to make it fit into your goals of creating this whole system, globalism, technocracy, and all that stuff that falls under scientism, right? So yeah, there's all of that, okay? But personally, I would kill myself before I accepted any of that. If I had a choice to become transhuman or die, I would die with the rest of nature. That's me, personally, okay? But I would fight like hell to preserve whatever's left so that I could live before they change it all, right? That's just me. I don't know why anybody would be different than that. Except now kids are growing up in technology, practically growing up in the matrix at this point, right? Don't know any difference. Don't even know nature exists.
Yeah.
Don't know how to live in it. Don't know the law of nature. Don't know God. Don't know anything. Never touched the Bible because they think it's religion. So, yes, there is so much more behind the story, which eventually we'll put into documentary form. But right now, to me, the urgency of this surpasses any of that because that's all stuff that will happen in the future if they're successful with all of this, you know, stuff they're doing. But right now, they're they want to kill everything in order to recreate it. It's the Phoenix Rising, right?
Yeah.
We can't let that happen. I mean, we can let that happen. That's the scary part. We probably will let that happen as a group because we're so lost. We're so out of touch with nature, with God, that we don't realize that even though they're packaging it in ways that are so exciting and new and technological and artful, yeah, it's just taking us further away to the
Convenient.
point. Well, it's an addiction. We're
Yeah.
going to be addicted to technology to the point where we can't live without it. So either fight it now or accept it, one or the other. But there's no use in doing what we're doing right now if you're just going to sit back and do nothing. I mean, it's going to happen to you whether you like it or not.
We
So
definitely need to reach the masses, and there's more to talk about on that, but not right now and not on this
no,
show. But because that's the only way is to reach the masses, which are those young people with their devices constantly on them and getting ready to put them on their faces and everything. It'll only get worse once it's on their eyes, I'm sure. But
I can't even imagine.
ugh, it's terrible. Well, I wanted to thank you for coming to talk to me today. This was great. I'm sorry it took so long. We were going to do this weeks ago, people. I'm sorry, but a couple weeks ago. But
No, thank you. Like I said, I need the, as you said, this is the only way we can reach people. So
well, and we'll
you
do it
know,
again. I imagine
and
my
and
questions out.
to anybody who doesn't know me or my work, it's always free. You can reproduce it, repost it, do anything you want to it, make it shorter, make it longer. You don't need my permission. It's not obviously there's more important things than property ownership or copyright bull crap, right? This is no longer again, it's no longer a matter of well, you can't make a copy of my it's not mine, it's all of ours. It's God's. It's you're either you're gonna share it, help, and try to do something about this, or you're not. So you don't need my permission to share this, reproduce it. You just can't sell it because once you do that, you're entering into their world, and that's when they can control it and take it down for copyright violations. As long as it's free and protected under law, uh, you know, educational purposes, nonprofit, then you can share it all you want. And please do.
Absolutely. And for anybody that doesn't already know you and know your work, I am going to put loads of links in there will be a link in the description of the video to get them to it. Because people should watch your part, the first part of the story, which is almost a decade ago, right? That you put out the lethal injection, the story of vaccination. That's a great, wow. So much work has gone into this stuff. And you've talked about Agenda 21 and the global privatization of everything.
Mm.
And your pension fund hoax. That's the one I've mentioned several times that people really should go check it out. And the new documentary, the part one. And it's as if you've done people a favor. They don't have to do the research part of it, but they can feel like they did because you have it all laid out in such a way. You did a really great job. It's a
That's
lot
the
of
goal. The goal, it's like a documentary for researchers, for documentary makers, for whatever, because I don't I don't limit myself to what Hollywood expects of me, and therefore people expect of a documentary because they think, well, 2 hours is the maximum, and really I don't want to watch anything past 10 minutes. Well, that really makes you a fool. That really makes you. It's really programming you to be ill-informed, and to believe in things like a 10-minute video that says viruses don't exist.
Well, I know that some of the people that listen to my videos and things on my channel have a very long attention span. So hopefully they will go and check it out. And the Red Pill Sunday School. You have so much information in there. And of course the one episode talking about the book we were talking about earlier, that's the banned one, right? That yeah, from your Red Pill Sunday School.
All of that
Yeah.
stuff. It's all free. It's all just pass it out. Do whatever you need to do. I don't don't make money off it. It's just we're just at a point now where money should be the last thing you're thinking of, unless it's to trade in, as the Bible says, to get some piece of nature that you can preserve and protect, which is your moral duty. That's what that's all I can say. Your spiritual duty. So anyway, thanks so much. Continue to do your great work as well. And if worst case scenario is maybe someday we'll all get together and
Live
you
in
know
our domes.
we'll have some
Oh,
fake some lab grown meat hamburgers
right
and
from the vat. It'll be good.
yeah, it'll
Yeah,
be
yeah. Mhm.
delicious and refreshing
Or
for
at least
our
it'll tell
synthetic
our brains
biology.
it's delicious, right? At
Yes, I
least.
can't wait.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you everyone for listening, and I am going to ask Clint to come back after part 2 comes on. So, yeah.
Cool beans.
All right. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Bye.